اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. We're in Surah At-Taghabun and verse number 14. Today we want to do for verse 14 and 15 inshallah. If we can finish, we'll finish. If not, these two verses we'll definitely do. And let's see if we can finish inshallah. There's a little bit of tafseer in these verses. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن من أزواجكم وأولادكم عدوا لكم فاحذروهم وإن تعفوا وتصفحوا وتغفروا فإن الله غفور رحيم. إنما أموالكم وأولادكم فتنة والله عنده أجر عظيم. فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم واسمعوا وأطيعوا وأنفقوا خيرا لأنفسكم ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. إن تقرضوا الله قرضا حسنا يضاعفه لكم ويغفر لكم والله شكور حليم. عالم الغيب والشهادة العزيز الحكيم. صدق الله العظيم. In Surah At-Taghabun, from the beginning, just a quick recap. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites us to understand Him, invites us to recognize Him, and mentions in the first verse that everyone, all creation, they submit to Him and they glorify His praise. And in the second verse, He gives insan or mankind a guidance, the guidance of life, whether you either pick kufr or iman. And then Allah gives the proof of why Allah should be the one that we all worship and the one we take as our ma'bud, the object of everything, the object of our worship and objective of our life. Because He created everything, He fashioned everything, He fashioned all of us in the best of ways, and to Him we'll all return. He knows everything in the skies and earth, apparent and hidden, and what's in the hearts. That's the next two verses. And then Allah Ta'ala gives the example of those in the past who also got the messengers. They rejected, Allah punished them. This is because Allah gave them clear proof, bil bayyinat, verse 6. And they brought irrational arguments like, okay, are we going to listen to insan? So Allah, it's not about, Allah Ta'ala sending a message through a human being or anything else. It's more about the message itself. And one of the main reasons they rejected, they didn't have real reason. They rejected based on what? These type of lousy arguments that, oh, you're going to send us a man. Is that an argument? Of all the daleel and all the things that Allah is giving you, are you really giving an actual response to why you're not accepting the deen? You're not giving a real response. And the next verse, verse number 7, Allah Ta'ala is saying the real reason is they don't want to accept the afterlife. They don't accept the afterlife. Allah Ta'ala is saying you'll definitely be what? Resurrected, and you'll be informed of everything you were told or you did. So believe in Allah, believe in the Noor, the Quran, Islam, and remember this big lesson. يَوْمَ يَجْمَعُكُمْ, verse number 9, that Allah will gather you on that day. لِيَوْمِ الْجَمْعِ ذَلِكَ يَوْمُ التَّغَابُنِ. That's the day when you'll be in loss. You'll be in loss. So all this stuff you're doing, you're rejecting Allah because of what reason? Any and everything that you're doing in dunya, whether it's power, wealth, name, fame, health, family, all these things, all going to be a means of loss for you. So all these excuses you're making for not accepting Islam and Iman, they're all going to be, we strive day and night for what? For our families, for power, for fame, or you can say prestige and honor in society, for influence. All of these things are going to be means of loss on the Day of Judgment. Only the person who brings Iman, does good deeds, then he will be in Jannah. And those who reject, they'll be in Jahannam. Verse number 11 now, that if you do sacrifice your dunya for your deen, if you do decide, I'm going to accept Islam, I'm going to follow the Quran, follow the Messenger, then will there be losses? Yes, there will be losses. But guess what? Whatever losses happens, Allah Ta'ala willed it, He wished it, and this will be for your goodness. مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Everything, whatever losses you incur by accepting Allah, the Quran, the Messenger, this will be by Allah's command, meaning Allah already willed it for you. So if a person does, go to the last page and all those ayat, if a person decides, I will take deen, and many of us here might be saying, these messages are not for me, I'm already Muslim. But the reality is, many of us are Muslim, but we don't act upon the Islam that we have. We profess, we claim that we're Muslim. Alhamdulillah, that's still good. But we don't act upon the Islam that we're supposed to be, right? So that's why this message is not just for the non-Muslims, for us too, So when you do accept that I'm going to fully establish Islam in my life, that's what's going to happen. You're going to gain loss. A business that says, you know what, we're only going to sell halal, what's going to happen? He's going to incur a loss. But remember, that loss will be worldly loss. In the akhirah, Allah will recognize this, and Allah will give him his gains. So, ma asaba min musibah, any musibah connecting to the other verses that you incur in trying to implement your deen, this was written by Allah, and Allah will give you what you deserve. وَمَنْ يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, the one who believes in Allah, يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ, Allah will show him the way. And we did the whole tafseer of how this refers to taqdeer and fate and all these things. So look, don't obey people, don't obey your bosses, don't obey the government, don't obey all of these things that you're following. Obey Allah first. أطيع الله وأطيع الرسول. After that, yes, you have to pledge allegiance to certain things, because what? You're in a certain country, so you have to. If you're a citizen, you have to sign a paper that I will abide by the laws. So you are bound by the laws of your country after binding yourself by the laws of Islam. You are bound by the laws of your company that you're working in, because you're an employee, you signed a contract. After you're bound by the laws of what? Islam. You are bound by the laws of your school, because as a student there, you signed the pledge. You know what I'm saying? So yes, we can pledge allegiance to other things, but they all fall under the pledge allegiance of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nowadays, you have some people, they misunderstand the Quran and Hadith. They say, we don't pledge to anyone besides Allah. It's a very, very feeble way of looking at it, or very superficial way of looking at it. You pledge allegiance to Allah and His Rasul. After that, you have to pledge allegiance to other things, right? You go home, you're pledging allegiance to the wife, right? That was a joke, by the way. She's supposed to pledge allegiance to you, but now in America it's different. Khair. किसी ने जवाब नहीं दिया, क्योंकि घर में जाके खाना भी खाना है ना. But I said, no, nowadays we pledge allegiance to the wives. No one answered, because when you go home, you're going to have to say, what did you say in the masjid? Khair. So yes, we pledge allegiance to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After that, everything else comes. And any of those allegiances that we have beneath that, if it goes against Allah and His Rasul, any of the commands, then we don't follow. We don't follow. Beautiful hadith, we're going to talk about it later, but since it came up, لا طاعة, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, لا طاعة لمخلوق. There is no such thing as obedience to the creation, في معصية الخالق, in the disobedience of Allah. In other words, if you have to follow someone, obey someone, listening to someone, but it amounts to disobeying Allah, then that is not obedience. That obedience is not, it's not permissible. You cannot do that. So the wife comes and says, please cut your beard. You don't look good. You don't look presentable. You don't look nice. I want to kiss you, but there's a whole thing of hair in your face. What do you say? Assalamu alaikum. There's enough other women out there that will, cherish and kya kehte usko? they will they'll cherish the sunnah. Our intention also should be, I'm not keeping the beard to look beautiful, to look presentable. I'm keeping the beard to follow the sunnah of Rasulullah. Even if it's something, the beard is wajib to keep, right? It's a sunnah of Rasulullah. Even if it's a sunnah that is not wajib. For example, after salah, 2 rakat after maghrib, is sunnah. It's not wajib. But now if a person starts mocking, then this becomes kufr. Or if you have a friend, as an example, who says, listen, every time, once in a while, okay, understood, we have to go somewhere, let's leave right after Fard, okay. But he makes a habit that, listen, don't worry about sunnah, man, it's just sunnah. Then that person's not a friend. And we're going to talk about that later today, inshallah. Right? So, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ. Obey Allah and His Messenger. فَإِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ فَإِنَّمَا عَلَى رَسُولِنَا بَلَاغٌ مُبِينٌ اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ. Listen, in doing all of these things, obeying Allah and His Rasul, and all these people will come against you, all these people, at that time, have tawakkul on Allah. فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Have tawakkul on Allah Ta'ala. Now, from the beginning of the surah till now, what did we learn? That Allah Ta'ala gave us a message, we have to accept it wholeheartedly, follow it. And when we don't, then people will speak against and go against. At that time, rely on Allah Ta'ala, and don't worry about the losses incurred. Allah will give you the khair, right? Next verse, and this is where we are today. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, verse number 14. Were we all here able to connect from the beginning of the surah till here? Did you guys see the connection? It's all connected. Did you notice? Today I mentioned completely differently. If you weren't paying attention, from the beginning till here I brought all the connections till here. I didn't mention these connections before. Now, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, the final connection, or you can say the final part of obeying Allah and disobeying creation in Allah's obedience. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O those who believe, inna min azwajikum, verily in your partners. Azwaj, zawj, partners. Generally we translate this as wives, in your wives. But the reality is partners. And I'll get to that. Verily in your partners, wa awladikum, and your children, your progeny, your children, aduwwal lakum. They are enemies for you. Verily in your partners and your children, there are enemies among you, within you, or for you. فَاحْذَرُوهُمْ, be wary of them. Be careful of them. Be alert of them. Hadr, be careful. وَإِن تَعْفُوا, and if you forgive, or ta'fu, if you excuse, overlook, ta'fu, وَتَصْفَحُوا, and you pardon, overlook, tasfahu, you pardon, وَتَغْفِرُوا, and you forgive, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, verily Allah is most forgiving and most merciful. إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ fitna. Your amwal, your mal, your wealth, and wealth can mean money, to cars, to houses, to business, right? Anything that you own. وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ, and your children. Even children can fall under wealth too. They're your wealth also. They're assets, right? Children are assets. And your children are verily a fitna, a test, a trial. Wallahu indahu, and Allah by Him, ajrun azim, is a great reward. Is a great reward. So, what does this mean? What does this mean? So, firstly, let's go back to the Tafseer books, and how it related to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba. However, we have to understand that Quran was not for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sahaba only. It was for the entire ummah till Yawm al-Qiyamah. Okay? It was revealed to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba as an example of how the Quran will be applied, and then everyone else must take from the Sahaba and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam how they applied it. But it's not restricted to them. It's for everyone. So to understand this verse, what happened? When Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam made hijrah from Mecca to Medina, there were certain families that stopped their husbands. Certain wives and children, they stopped their husbands because hijrah meant we're moving completely. We're not coming back. We're leaving everything. Now, for people who live in a place and they've never lived anywhere else, for them to move completely, leaving everything behind and go somewhere where there's no promise of anything, the people in that community said they will help you. But how much help are they going to give? And how much are you going to beg? No one wants to, unless you're moving on your own accord, you have the means, right? You have the means and you know people there, then it's easier. But you don't know anything, you're just leaving. That's what hijrat was. Right? Hijrat was suddenly Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came and said, listen, we have to go. Boom. But the next 1-2 days is gone. Hijrat was not easy. Anyone moving randomly because they have to and they don't know where they're going, it's very difficult. So at that time, some of the women folk of some of the Sahaba, they told them, listen, don't leave. What are we going to do there? How are we going to do anything? And this is what the Quran was referring to when Allah Ta'ala said, from among your wives and children are those who are enemies to you. In other words, listen to this carefully though. A fard hukum came. I'm going to explain this later. A fard hukum came. Hijrah was not sunnah. It wasn't mustahab. Just like salah is fard, hijrah was fard. Right? It was not it's not a fard for until Qiyamah. It was fard for that time for those people. Hijrah was fard. Sometimes, I'm going to go a little off tangent, just a little bit. Sometimes ulama will give fatwa of something being necessary, but it's restricted to time. The ulama of India gave fatwa that English is haram. It was for that time. Don't misunderstand the ulama. It was for that time, because when you send your children to school, they would fall under the traps of the British, right? They would be brainwashed and they would turn against their Muslims or turn against India, Pakistan, Bangladesh at that time. So when the ulama gave fatwa, it's haram, it was for that time being. It wasn't for till, right now English is almost like it's fard, right? You have to learn it, right? Similarly, they said going to public school, westernized schools, and that time was haram for that same reason. And today is almost the same reason, us living here as well. We see what's happening with our children. Anyway, that's a little off tangent. Coming back to the situation. So this was a fard hukum from Allah. No person, even Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, had no right to abrogate it or say anything against it. You have to do it thus. So the family came in between that. Remember this point. We're going to get to points later. So if anyone comes in between a fard hukum, is not permissible. You don't follow that person. Even if your parents come in between, you don't listen to your parents. Did everyone understand that? Okay. Another situation also mentioned by Sahaba was when Sahaba did go to Medina, there was times where what happened? Muslims had to go to war. So there was a time where they were to go to war in Medina, and one Sahabi by the name of Auf bin Malik al-Ashja'i, radiyallahu anhu, when he was about to go and participate in the expedition, jihad, to go and fight in battle and to support and defend the Muslims, that's when his wife said, first you made us leave from our homes to some strange unknown place. Now you want to leave us also completely? What if you die? You're going to leave us completely homeless? You're going to leave us just like that? And a husband, a father, generally what happens? It's the family that weakens him. The family can be his strength, or they can be his weakness. Right? I'm not saying anyone's family specifically, but generally when it comes to money, then they're a strength, right? When it comes to anything else, they're a weakness. I've seen many, many families, and many of us know, I'm from Bangladesh, so I'll just give you an example. A man will come from Bangladesh and leave his family for 10, 15, 20 years. The wife will not complain once. Am I right? It's okay, Bidesh, he's gone to another country, he's earning money, he's supporting me. She'll have children, raise all those children by herself, take them to school, everything. The man will come back after 15 years, mashallah, he's ready to buy a house. No complaint. As long as you come once a year, once in 2 years, once in 5 years also okay, no problem. As long as you're supporting us. But now the moment the wife is home, the kids are home, now he says, I want to go 4 months Jamaat. Allahu Akbar. Kaun chalayega? Kaun ghar chalayega? Who's going to take care of this? Who's going to take care of that? Who's going to take... How did you do it for 10, 15 years? You understand what I'm saying? So unfortunately, generally the case is If you need to leave the family for dunya, unfortunately, this is the case. Family accepts it. You're going on a business trip. You have to go for 2 months. Oh, Allah Ta'ala they make dua also. May Allah Ta'ala make it easy for you, and Allah Ta'ala this and this and this, No worry, don't worry, we'll be okay. But when it comes for deen, Allahu Akbar. So this is the reality. This is the reality. Illa masha'Allah, maybe some families are such that what? The wife will say, go out on the path of Allah. So this happened with Auf bin Malik al-Asja'i, and that's when he also changed his mind. A man is, I told you, he can become weak or strong based on his what? His family. Right? His family is either will be his strength or they'll be his weakness. And if there is strength in deen, mashallah. If there is weakness in deen, inna lillah. That's when aduwwul lakum fahdharuhum. They are your enemies, be careful. They are fitna, be careful. But if the family is your strength in deen, then they are not adu, they are not enemies. Right? And if they're your weakness in dunya, alhamdulillah, that's good. You want to do all this dunya, get all this wealth and money. The wife is like, it's okay, don't worry so much. You're going to miss namaz because of this job? No reason to. Go. Leave the job. Go for namaz. That's when they're your strength in deen. Those are the ones that are not aduwwul lakum. They're not enemies to you. That's why also some ulama say, Allah Ta'ala used the word min. Min can sometimes come to show some of. Verily, among your wives and children, or among your partners and children, some are those who are enemies to you. Some are those who are enemies to you. Not all partners, spouses, and children are enemies to you. This is why I said you have both categories. You have to decide what category you fall in. Okay? So these are the two tafsir mentioned in Mufassirin that among Sahaba this happened, and Allah Ta'ala labeled them as enemies. However, listen, they're still Muslim. They made a mistake. Okay? And because they had genuine concern. You have to give them that credit. A family, they're Sahaba. Even the women are Sahaba too. They had genuine concern that if you're going to leave us, who's going to take care of us? Their yaqeen was not at the level of going 2 ayat before. فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ Was that it? فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. If you have tawakkul on Allah, Allah will take care of you. And we should not point fingers at them. They were learning their tawakkul. We go nowhere close to their tawakkul. Okay? They're learning and we're learning from them. So if they had weak levels of tawakkul, we don't even exist on that plane. We're much weaker. Alhamdulillah, because of them we learn this, right? Because of their mistakes we learn. So never can we criticize Sahaba. La hawla, you lose your iman if you criticize Sahaba. So if you're going to say the wife of Malik bin Auf al-Asjari, her iman was better than all the Muslims together. Cannot compare with their iman. But they made mistakes. They're human beings, right? And we learn from those mistakes. May Allah have mercy on them. Grant them highest of Jannah. So don't ever look down on the mistakes of Sahaba. Because of them, we are where we are. Alhamdulillah. So they made mistakes. What happened now? Malik bin Auf al-Asja'i, or Auf bin Malik al-Asja'i, and these other Sahaba, these two categories of Sahaba, those who tried to do hijrah, they were stopped. Those who tried to go for jihad, they were stopped by the families. Later on, when they went out, when they did the hijrah later, they realized, hey, these people that hijrah before us, they're way ahead, and we lost out. But when they later on went to jihad, they realized these people who went out before us, they're way ahead, and we are left out. We're so behind, and this all happened because of my family. It happens, right? I was supposed to go to a certain thing. MashaAllah, Arabic class is starting in the Mr. Hamza. I was supposed to join, but my family is complaining. As it is, you're not here these nights, now you're spending more nights. And then later on, you're like, okay, take it, I'll follow my family, right? Then 1-2 months later, you see your satis, same satis that used to sit in masjid, they're speaking Arabic now. They're reading Quran, understanding. And now like, hey, look what she made me do. Now you want to go and what? Start fighting with the wife now. So Allah Ta'ala says what? وَإِن تَعْفُوا. If you overlook. وَإِن تَعْفُوا. If you overlook their mistakes that they made. وَتَصْفَحُوا. And you pardon. Let it go. وَتَغْفِرُوا. You made a mistake. Forgive them. وَتَغْفِرُوا. Then Allah will forgive you of your sins. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah will forgive them also. He'll forgive you also. They made a genuine mistake. Right? And here in this situation, even if it was a fard also, hijrat was fard. Jihad also, in certain times, was fard. When everyone's being attacked and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, everyone go up. That's fard on you. Everyone has to go. It's not an option. So they stopped you even at a fard. They made a mistake. The spouses made a mistake. Allah understood this and said, look, even in a fard they made a mistake. They shouldn't have done this. Forgive them. Allah will forgive them and Allah will forgive you also. So some of the husbands, even today, when you hear this message, you say, you know what? I wanted to sit in tafseer. Today I sat, and this is what I learned. You didn't let me sit. No, that's not the way to do things. Or I wanted to do this and you didn't let me do it. Remember 10 years ago, I was going to do this, and you didn't let me do it? So Allah saying, let it go, let it go, let it go. Forgive and Allah will forgive. So we all understand this? So this is Allah Ta'ala doesn't just give us something so strict and doesn't give a rebound connection. Basically, He'll tell you, look, this is how you fix it. Teach the family that this is the way we should have done. It was wrong. And inshallah, the next time, don't stop me. I will do it. And what you did before, may Allah forgive you and me both. And we shouldn't do it again. Simple. This is the beautiful ta'aleem of deen. Not to come on harsh to your spouse and this and name calling and blaming, blame game. This is not the way we Muslims do. So, Imam Qurtubi mentions a few points, very important points. He says that he brings a hadith, very beautiful hadith, and he says that, it is mentioned in Bukhari Sharif, that shaitan will sit before Adam, the children of Adam, insan, before man. He will sit before man in the path of Iman, and he will say to that person, are you going to believe in Allah and leave your deen and the deen of your forefathers? Then that person will go against him. Number one, stage one. Right? Number two, the person will believe. Then again, shaitan will come in the path and stop him from doing hijrah. Hijrah. And he'll say, are you going to leave your family, leave your wealth, leave your everything that you have? Then the person will go against him and he'll make hijrah. Number two. Hijrah is specific to the Sahaba. For us, any major work of deen we want to do, to extent ulama say hijrah for us may also apply. Right? Hijrah for us may also apply. If we live in a country where we cannot practice deen, then for us hijrah is far. Ulama say hijrah is done already. There's no more hijrah. But right now is intention. Right? Hijrah is finished. The movement had taken place. There's no more hijrah. But other ulama say no. If you live in a place where you cannot follow your deen and you're being oppressed and you cannot follow your deen, oppression is different. You cannot follow your deen is something else. Then you must make hijrah. You must move, migrate. There's some people that are ill-informed, misunderstand. They say in America, I cannot live and practice my deen, so I have to move. That's not the case. You can practice your deen however you want to practice your deen. You understand? It's on you. It's difficult, but no one's stopping you. There's a difference. It's difficult to raise your children in this environment in deen. That's true. But no one's stopping you from practicing your deen. You can practice your deen. No one's stopping you. If you're formally being stopped, then you have to move. Okay. Next, in the hadith, it says number 3. And then what happens? Then shaitan comes in the way, and a person who wants to go and perform jihad, go and give his life for Allah, for the give his life for deen, go fight in the path of Allah to defend his deen, or even his country, his honor. And then shaitan comes in that way also. He sits in his path and he says, are you going to go fight and you're going to get killed? You're going to kill others, and then your wife is going to get married to someone else, and your wealth is going to be distributed, and your children are going to go homeless and become orphans. And then the person goes against shaitan and continues as well. 3 different stages. In the path, shaitan will come at these 3 different stages. Then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, when a person passes that 3rd stage, فَحَقٌّ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَن يُدْخِلَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. Then Allah Ta'ala, He has taken this responsibility upon Himself that He will make sure that person enters Jannah. SubhanAllah. These 3 were examples. For all of us, we also, in our lives, will make major decisions of deen. And shaitan will come in the way and say, you're going to do this? You want to do this? And all these excuses are going to come. What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? You want to get a certain job, right? But it's going to come in the way of your salah, your namaz. Or you won't be able to pass on one time properly. So shaitan will come in different forms and say, yeah, but look, you're making this much money. It'll be easier like this. and Allah is forgiving. All these excuses. So these were three major things that came in the way of Sahaba. In their way of deen, shaitan came in major points of their road towards Allah Ta'ala, trying to stop them, and they overcame and they reached Allah. We will also face the same situation in our lives. We will come over major milestones where we have to decide this way or that way. And it's clear that this is the deeni way, this is the dunyawi way. Right? Small, tiny example. Small example. Every morning, I feel this too as a parent, but of course, alhamdulillah, deen tells me otherwise. I go to wake up my son, but I know he needs sleep. If he doesn't sleep properly, the rest of the day won't go properly. Right? He won't study, he won't do what he needs to do. So what some parents will do, let him sleep. He's still not baligh yet. Let him sleep, he'll get up and pray a little later, no problem. He needs his rest. So I gave preference of his comfort over his deen. Not realizing, you might say Allah will forgive, but his health is more important. See that? His health is more important. So sometimes we make this is a small example, you make these wrong decisions. Yes, my daughter wants to go to university and she has to get this degree, she really wants to do this, but she has to move away from home. Many of us are faced with this. She has to move away from home, out of state. Well, what's that? Upstate. It's only 3 hours away. She'll come over the weekends. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. We've had incidents where what happened? We've had one incident where a sister we used to know, she used to come to the masjid for maktab. I think I mentioned this before. She's become lesbian now and run away with the other girl. Hijab girl that comes to the maktab of the masjid. This is not strange. It's normal. It's normal. Whose fault is it? You as the parent. Why did you allow such a thing? You don't know in deen, a woman cannot be separated alone without a mahram? You don't know? But what did we do? We sacrificed our deen for our dunya. That's exactly, who did it? You did it. You should have taught that child from a little age, 4 or 5 years old, you have to put the hijab on. No, it's not farad on her. But if you don't get her mentally used to it now, you think when she's 10 and 12 years old, she'll wear it? She's not going to wear it. And not just her, even the boys. You don't teach them salah when he becomes baligh. We have maktab students, 12, 13 years old. They don't know salah, they don't know kalima. Alhamdulillah, at least the parents brought them to us. Parents all nice and jolly and happy. Alhamdulillah, we're teaching our kids deen. Kid doesn't know anything. He's supposed to learn way before he's baligh about praying salah. So as soon as he's baligh, he's praying automatically. Don't teach him when he becomes baligh. Don't wait till when he's 7, 8, 9 years old. No. You're supposed to teach him at 2 years old. How? Don't force him to pray. You're supposed to be praying and he watches you. That's how he learns. If he doesn't know about salah and he's older, that means you don't pray yourself. Simple. So we don't realize in times and instances where we give preference of deen, of dunya over deen. We don't realize it. Our actions show it. I gave you 1, 2 examples. We can go all night with examples, but we'll stop here. So this is a very important hadith, that shaitan will come on the way of your deen. Next point, shaitan will use different means. He will use your boss, he will use your teacher, he will use your student, your employee, he will use your family, he will use your tribe, or let's go to tribe, your countrymen, your colleagues, your classmates, whatever. Finally, the last stage, and this is why we're talking here, he will use your family. He will use your family. He will use your wives, and for women, he will use your husbands also. So it's not just wives. That's why in the beginning I translated as what? Pairs. Verily, in your partners, in your spouses, there are enemies. It could be husband and wife. It's not just wife. For a woman, her husband could also be her enemy. Okay. This here refers to when it comes to ibadat and worship. All right? So I'm going to make a very important, strong statement. Some of us may not like it, but those who are grown, elderly, they understand this. And this is one of my own points that I've understood. Everyone in dunya is a connection to me. Everyone that I'm connected to in dunya is a sense of responsibility on me. What does this mean? I'm connected to you all here. I'm connected to my wife and kids. I'm connected to my parents, to my teachers, to my students, to my co-workers and colleagues, employer and employee. These are all connections. What is the nature of all these connections? The nature of all these connections is that they are all responsibilities. And I have to fulfill the responsibilities. The more connections I make, the more responsibilities I have. I have a responsibility to my wife. I have a responsibility to my children. I have a responsibility to my boss, to my employers, my employees, my classmates, my colleagues, my teachers. Every person that I'm connected with is a responsibility. It sounds harsh, but it's the truth. On the Day of Judgment, Allah will ask me about my responsibilities. Did you fulfill the rights of this person, this person, this person, this person, this person? That person is not going to help me in any way besides that, and I'm not going to help him in any way besides that. It'll be, did I fulfill your responsibilities? If I didn't, punish me. If I did, okay, check. Haqq, it's called haqq, huquq, rights. So this sounds harsh, but it's a reality. Haqiqat, right? It's a reality. We don't like to say this. My child is a responsibility, right? He can be an asset, or what's the other word? Liability, right? My parents, same thing. My spouse, the same thing. Every connection that I have is a responsibility. They can either be an asset or a liability. I have to fulfill rights, no matter what, whether I like them or I don't, whether I'm deemed that or I'm not. Allah will ask me on the Day of Judgment concerning all of these connections that I have. This is one of the reasons why we should minimize connections. I know it sounds harsh. We should minimize connections, because the more connections you have, the more responsibilities you have. And you will be answerable on the Day of Judgment. So, okay. There are 4 types of rights. There are 4 types of rights. Okay, I think we'll get to that a little later, inshallah. Okay, so let's just give it now. There are 4 types of rights. There are rights of Allah. There are rights of the servant. Huququllah, huququl ibad. We mentioned this many times, right? Huququllah, rights of Allah, huququl ibad, rights of the servant. Of both of these rights, you can divide into 2 more. Each one divides into 2 more. So the right of Allah, there are those that are farz, obligation, obligatory, necessary. And there are those that are optional. Sunnat, mustahab, mustahsan, good things to do. Right? And the rights of servants, again, same 2 types. There are those that are fard, necessary, and there are those that are optional. So 4 rights, right? Rights of Allah that are farz, rights of Allah that are not farz. Rights of makhluk, creation, that is farz. Rights of makhluk that is not farz. We all understand? Now let's put everything in their place. Rights of Allah that are farz, we have to do it? Yes. Rights of makhluk, creation that is farz, we have to do it? Yes. Yes. You have to take care of your family, take care of your parents, make sure you're feeding them, make sure you're clothing them, you have a house, shelter somewhere, they're staying somewhere, right? So number 1 and number 3, rights of Allah that are farz, you have to fulfill. Rights of makhluk that are farz, you have to fulfill. Got that? And then rights of Allah that are not farz is up to you. You try your best to do. Becoming more deendar, learning more deen, acting upon deen more, all the different extra things. And rights of makhluk that is not farz, optional. You should try to do that too. Maybe, get not 1 degree, maybe 2 or 3 degrees. Instead of having some money that suffices, you get more money. Instead of 1 business, have 5 businesses. No problem. There's nothing wrong. Obviously, as long as it's not haram, right? Take it. Now the 4. Can you try to get all 4? Very difficult. Very difficult. Because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this also, that I can remember the hadith is something more or less that if a person tries to attain dunya and deen together, he will be sufficient in one. He cannot attain both fully. If he tries to attain his deen to a full extent, to the most that it'll harm his dunya. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Hubbuka dunya yadurru akhiratak." Your love for dunya will harm your akhirah. Your love of dunya will harm the akhirah. وَحُبُّكَ الْآخِرَةِ يَضُرُّ دُنْيَاكَ. Your love of akhirah will harm your dunya. It's just, and then he said, فَكُونُوا مِنْ أَبْنَاءِ الْآخِرَةِ وَلَا تَكُونُوا مِنْ أَبْنَاءِ الدُّنْيَا. Be the inheritors of the akhirah, not the inheritors of dunya. It doesn't mean that a person can't be rich. You can be rich, but if in being rich, it'll be hard to bring more, the complete deen in your life. You can bring what's fard. Now let's go back to the 4 categories. Fard of Allah we have to do, yes? Fard of makhluk we have to do, okay? What mistake do we sometimes make? Sometimes we sacrifice our fard that we have to give to Allah for the fard we have to give to creation. Namaz baad mein padenge. Abhi job mein jana hai. We have to go to work. I'll pray namaz, salah later. It's okay. Allah understands. He's forgiving. Haram. This is haram. She'll wear hijab later. Let her go to school now. She'll understand later. Haram. We give dunya preference over, or rather, that's not a good example. Example, she has to go to work, or she has to go to work. So therefore, for example, her mixing and all these things, it's actually, this is not a good example. Example of a person who has to attain dunya, right? I have to go to work. Let's not say she, right? I have to go to work, but in going to work, I have to sacrifice my salah. I give that example already. So this is not permissible. My complaint is, in our daily life, how many faraid are there? Only one. You have to pray salah 5 times in the day. That's it. No other farz from Allah. Allah Ta'ala gave us 24 hours. He's only asking how many hours back? Not even one. So we cannot tell Allah, Ya Allah, I had to fulfill the farz of my dunya, the rights that I had due to my parents and my children and my wife and all these things. So I couldn't fulfill the farz that you made necessary on me. I cannot give that excuse. Allah's going to give this answer. I gave you 24 hours. You couldn't give me back half an hour? Is that how important your dunya was? So there's no excuse to leave out the fard that is due to Allah. Ramadan time, only 1 month the whole year we're fasting for half the day. Zakat if you have money. Hajj if you have money. So there's only 2 things. Once a month the whole year. 1 month the whole year of half day fasting. And every day half an hour time. That's it. So no excuse can I have on the Day of Judgment that I had to do the fard of my dunya, so I couldn't do the fard of my deen. Everyone understood this? Next. Then we have the optional ones. Optional deen, optional dunya. This is where, look, you can choose. If you pick optional deen and you sacrifice some dunya, this is something that's good. Again, if you go for optional deen, I want to become hafiz, I want to become alim, I want to donate $10,000 or $100,000. These are optional deen, optional deeni deeds. If you do it, alhamdulillah. If you don't do it, it's okay. So what's the best thing? Try to do it. And if you sacrifice dunya for it, it's okay. You can do it. It's good. Understood this? Next scene, next scenario. Optional dunya, you do that and you leave out optional deen. I want to have 3 businesses. I want my child also to get a business degree so he can take care of this. I don't want him to become a hafiz. This is permissible. It's jaiz. Why? Because it's optional. You don't have to get that deen. But it's better not to. You give preference over that deen, optional deen, than optional dunya. Everyone understood this? We're talking about number 2, number 4. Giving optional dunya preference over optional deen is not good, but it's okay, it's jaiz. We all understood this? Okay, so these are the 4 categories. Next mistake we make. The first mistake, we give preference to farz dunya over farz deen. Guys. Next mistake we make, we give preference to optional dunya over farz deen. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This is a major, major mistake. And the example is what I mentioned. that I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to this, I'm going to go on a business trip. I'll be 3 days, and I can't pray my salah in these few days, 3 days. Something optional, you're giving preference over fard of deen. We do this, a lot of us do this. You have to understand where the ruling is. Completely haram. Completely haram. Allah Ta'ala will put no barakah in that wealth. As a matter of fact, He will make it your downfall. You'll see you will be losing out. All right? And the next mistake that we'll make is, okay, so optional dunya, I mentioned this already. Optional dunya, you give preference over optional deen, it's okay. But it's not good. It's not good. Some mistake some of our brothers make, they give optional, this is the next one. Optional deen preference over optional dunya. Good. It's good. However, they overdo it. Optional deen, example, go 4 months Jamaat. MashaAllah. Very good. They give, I'm sorry, my mistake. They give optional deen preference over farz dunya. Optional deen preference over farz dunya. Example, I want to go 4 months Jamaat. MashaAllah. The wife and kids, what about them? Allah Ta'ala Allah Ta'ala will take care of them. What does that mean? Allah Ta'ala will take care of them? فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Sab, you said it. Wrong understanding of tawakkul. Now, we have a certain alim, I don't know if he's alim, or I don't know if, Wallahu alam, some people said that he said this. He said, going to Jamaat is farz. Misunderstanding of deen. Misunderstanding of deen. Grave misunderstanding. Where you said going Jamaat is farz, where in the Quran and Hadith it says so? What some people who don't understand the effort, what they do, they'll go 4 months and their kid is rotting away, they have no deen in their lives, they're not praying a single salah. The wife, oh, pata nahi kiske saath ghum rahe. Whose fault is that? Husband's fault. Now the husband is day and night, he's doing work of deen, mashallah. Optional deen. But he's not taking care of the fard of his wife. His wife needs him at home at a certain time. She needs him. This is fard dunya. This is also not jaiz. A lot of men do this. They look religious, mashallah. They look deendar. But we shouldn't judge their intentions. Maybe their intentions are good, but their amal is bad. This is why you have to, when you want to do any deeni work, make mashwara with the ulama. Don't just do things by yourself. In going into, sometimes a person says, and I'm not speaking against any of the people of deen, right? But a person says, I want to become hafiz, my parents are not letting me. I tell them, look, it's not fard for you to become hafiz, but it's fard for you to listen to your parents. You understand now? This is another mistake we make. We give optional deen preference over farz dunya, not jaiz. Father, maybe we're not going to say which father is deendar, which one is not, but he's looking at his whole family. I have to take care of my family. Now this son wants to go and become hafiz. Bhai, 5, 6 years gone, who's going to take care of the family? I need you here with me. At that time, you must listen to your father, even if you want to do something deeni, something good. Because your father is worried about a farz. And similarly, listening to your father is farz. Everyone understood these examples? It's very important. We mix up all of these things. Now, if the son is saying, I need to go for salah in the masjid, and the mother is saying no, at that time you don't listen, because farz deen versus farz dunya. You give farz deen preference. You have to listen to your mother also. You have to pray your salah also. At that time you give farz deen preference. So when it comes to these two fard, this one will get priority. But like I said, the fard of Islam is very little bit. So they won't clash. The fard of dunya and the fard of deen, they don't clash. You make it clash. Now you know that you can pray if your mother really, really needs you at home. Some emergency. And you want to go to the masjid, you can also pray it at home. Emergency. You can pray it at home. Why are you going to make an argument with your mother for? So this is called fiqh, faqahat. Understanding the deen. It's not as simple as some people say, Quran, hadith, Quran, hadith, Quran. You open up Bukhari, you don't know what you're saying, what you're doing. It's a deeper understanding of deen. It's deeper understanding of deen. We all understood these examples, inshallah? If we can listen to the recording again if we didn't, and listen to it again. We have to learn this. You have to understand where we're playing, where we're our situation. When I want to make a decision, my wife is saying something, my child is saying, look at this. Okay, what? And if you can't, it's okay. Go to Imam Sab or Mufti Sab, Khatib Sab. Can you please help me out? How do I make a decision here? Right? Go to someone who's not like me, we're young people, mashallah. We have elderly ulama who have experience of 15, 20, 30 years. They have understanding of how to work with the family and balance between dunya and akhirah. And they'll help you, inshallah. Next point. Next point is that shaitan will use your family against you. That's the meaning of the ayat. The meaning of the ayat is not your wife is shaitan. Some people will leave it like, the ayat said, Biwi shaitan hai. First of all, we didn't say wife. We said what? Partner, spouse. And the Mufassirin mentioned, Imam Qurtubi mentions this goes for the man and woman. Azwaj, for a man, his wife is a fitna. His wife can be a fitna, can be an enemy. And for a woman, her husband can be a fitna, can be an enemy. But listen carefully. Shaitan uses them to break you between you and Allah Ta'ala. Obedience of Allah and yourself and Allah Ta'ala, the obedience. Shaitan uses them. It doesn't mean, number one, they're shaitan. It doesn't mean this. Number two, it doesn't mean that everything they do is shaitani. Sometimes it happens with 1 or 2 incidents, 3 or 4 incidents, maybe once a month, maybe once a year. You have to understand at that point, this is that coming from her is shaitan's influence on her. This that my husband is saying is shaitan's influence on him. Is not deen. So it doesn't mean that the person is shaitan. It doesn't mean that everything that comes from them is shaitan. This is not what the ayat means. We should not leave the masjid today thinking that, bhai, ye to shaitan hai. Mere ghar mein shaitan hai aur iske sare bacche bhi shayateen hai. The wrong understanding. It means that shaitan will use your spouse and your children against you in reaching Allah Ta'ala. At that time, what are you supposed to do? Hey, you're shaitan, shaitan, shaitan. No. What's right after that? وَإِن تَعْفُوا وَتَصْفَحُوا وَتَغْفِرُوا. Chhod do, let it go. Work around it. See how you can work around it. And if you do this, Allah will forgive you and them. They made a mistake. It's a mistake. You don't make mistakes. Otherwise, she'll tell you, aaj tu shaitan hai. One day she'll say, you're shaitan. What are you going to say then? Some extra point. We should also not call people shaitan. When our children do mess around, don't call it shaitan. Hey, shaitan. Don't say this. Because there's a very big thing in Islam. It's very important how you name a person. One of the rights of a believer is that of a child is that the father must name you properly. I used to think, hey, choti si baat hai. What's naming someone? Why is it mentioned so big in books of hadith? One of the rights of the child upon the parents is that they must give him a good name. It's a big, very big thing in Islam. Later on, I realized a child lives up to that name. Allah. I've seen this so many times. A child lives up to that name. I know some of us like to name our daughters Tanya. You know Tanya? So one time, one person was asked, why did you name your daughter Tanya? He said, I love the ayat, وَلَا تَنِيَا فِي ذِكْرِي. وَلَا تَنِيَا فِي ذِكْرِي. You know what this means? Don't be lazy in my dhikr. What'd you name your daughter? Lazy. And I've seen Tanyas that are actually lazy. Doesn't mean all Tanyas are lazy, but the name has an effect. The name has an effect, right? I like to answer a lot of questions. I try to stop, I try not to, but I like to answer all the time. Later on, I realized my name is Mujeeb, Jawab Dene Wala. And you'll find this very often that people live up to their names. So when you call a kid shaitan, he becomes more shaitan. Yes, I've seen this too. So what you call a kid, it affects the person. He becomes more like that. And this is also child psychology as well. The way you'll label a child, it affects him, it traumatizes him, and it makes him act upon that. So that's why we have to be very careful. So yes, from the Quran, some people, I've heard one alim say, by shaitan ne, Allah Ta'ala ne inko shaitan bataya. So what's your problem? I can't say ye shaitani kar rahe. Don't, you shouldn't do this. That's not what the Quran is saying. Shaitan has influence. So these actions don't make your wife or your husband or your children enemies to you. They don't make them enemies, they don't make them shaitan. They are acts of shaitan and influences which influence your family into doing this. That's what the meaning of In verily among your wives and children are enemies to you. They are fitna upon you. What does this mean? Shaitan uses them to draw enmity between you and Allah Ta'ala. He uses them to make a fitna between you and Allah Ta'ala. But at that time, what are you supposed to do? وَإِن تَعْفُوا وَتَصْفَحُوا وَتَغْفِرُوا. You're supposed to pardon, forgive, and try to change things. Fix means help your family change. This Imam Qurtubi mentions this, that this adawat, enmity, animosity, enemy, and this fitna is not innately in the person that they are fitna, they are enemy of Allah. No, no, no. Shaitan uses them as to make you an enemy to Allah. Shaitan uses them as a fitna between you and Allah Ta'ala. They are not in and of themselves fitna and enemies. No, it's wrong to understand. So we have to correct that also. And sometimes, next point is small point, sometimes Shaitan will use whispers, sometimes Shaitan will use people. Right? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. Surah Nas is about, I seek protection, O Allah, in you against what? قُلْ أَعُوذُ, I seek refuge, بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ, in the Lord of people. Malik nas, the King of people. Ilahi nas, the Lord, the one worthy of worship of people, the deity. Min sharril waswasil khannas, from the evil of the one who whispers. He whispers and he goes away. So, الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. So shaitan comes in two forms. One is he'll whisper to you. One is he'll come in the form of people and try to convince you. So sometimes people do the work of shaitan, and sometimes you get whispers. You think to yourself, maybe I should do this. This is, if it's something wrong, evil against Deen and Islam, Quran and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is also from shaitan as well. So it is not always that a person will come and try to take you away from Deen. Sometimes your own whispers will come and do that as well. That's the next point. I think that's all the points in understanding this. There was one or two more points that I can't remember. That's it, inshallah. Innama amwalukum, your wealth, wa awladukum, your children, fitna. They are fitna. They are trial. What does this mean? Your wealth and your children will test you. Will test you in the sense that most of us, what do? All day and night, we're working. To what? To actually get more money so we can survive and live, not survive, so we can live nice, or so we can raise our children. Similarly, our children are a means, they are fitna also. Sometimes they make us choose, make different decisions because my child said so, he wants it this way. So they become a means of fitna, test. Am I going to choose Deen and Islam, or am I going to choose the way of dunya? So the wealth and the children, they are a test of you, and you're making your decisions. So you have to be very careful. Don't fail this test and this trial of your children and your wealth. Aim it for dunya, aim it for deen. Know that in your wealth and in your children, you're going to get a lot back, a lot of money back. The children will take care of you. But if you don't follow their ways, what's going to happen? You might get some loss. مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ فَبِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. When that loss does happen, don't worry. Allah Ta'ala will what? This is from Allah Ta'ala. And Wallahu indahu, by Allah, ajrun azim, is a greater reward. Will there be difficulty in choosing your deen over your children and your wealth? Yes. But that difficulty, Allah will give you immense amount of reward for it. May Allah Ta'ala gives tawfiq. And I mentioned very important this point, especially sisters listening at home. I did mention azwaj is what? Pairs, spouses, partners. So it doesn't refer to here the women are fitna for men, or the women are enemies to men. It's both ways. A man can also be a fitna for a woman as well. One small story, and then we'll finish, inshallah. I mentioned the story before, very beautiful story. One woman, she's sitting with her friends, and she's mentioning, her friends are like, you're the deendar one among us. Right? MashaAllah, you wear the hijab, you pray your salah, but you're divorced. So what happened? You're supposed to be the deeni one. What happened? You're divorced. And she's like, you never understood. Before I got married, I wasn't deendar. But when I got married, I realized I have to change my life. So that's when I made istikhara. I asked Allah Ta'ala to put khair in the decision I make. And I got married. And subhanAllah, who did I get married to? The guy he's a drunkard, he drinks, he doesn't pray his salah, and he has nothing to do with deen. Bas, naam se. By name he's a Muslim. And now I'm thinking, Ya Allah, this is supposed to be my life partner? How am I supposed to live with him? He's supposed to help me with my deen. I'm going to be doing my deen and his deen. Now I realize that I have to do this on myself, on my own, by myself. I cannot expect help from him. Many of us who get married or who want to get married, we think, mashallah, my wife will be my better half. Or the woman, they think my husband will be my better half. It doesn't always work like that. If you don't fix yourself before you get married, that'll become your downfall. The spouse will be the first one to say, I'm not responsible for you. Why didn't you? That's why don't wait to get married. Fix yourself before that. Anyway, he said, now I realize that I have to bring my deen myself. I started wearing hijab now. I started praying salah now. I started reading the Quran now. And now he dislikes me even more. He has hatred for me. And now I'm thinking, Ya Allah, I can't even give him divorce. Because men have the ability to divorce. Now I'm making dua, Ya Allah, help me. What am I supposed to do? Subhanallah, then what he does? He gives her the divorce. And so the sister, the friends are like, okay, so she's like, you still didn't understand. He didn't have deen, but him coming into my life was my reason for deen. So even in the divorce, there was khayr. In marrying him, there was khayr, and the divorce, there was khayr. Subhanallah. So we don't know where khayr is. Sometimes Allah puts difficulty in my path, but that becomes a means of goodness. May Allah ta'ala give us tawfiq wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullah khair. Please have your samosa and chai, inshallah. Ji Hazrat? So uncle is asking a question. Uncle's asking a question, and you can get your tea, inshallah. Please get your tea. We're going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about that. So get your tea, inshallah. We'll keep talking, and you can listen. You can go also. So uncle is asking, what about our mother Hawa radiallahu anha? Was she the cause of Adam alayhi salam coming out of Jannah? Was she the enemy? Was she the fitna? It's a very good question. So the answer is simple. The answer is that Allah Ta'ala destined for mankind to continue in dunya. So Allah Ta'ala used this as a means. And Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, it wasn't she that did it, they both did it. So Allah Ta'ala made nisbat of what happened to both of them. In Christianity, they make the nisbat to Hawa radiallahu anha, that she was the reason why. But in Islam, they both, I can't remember the ayat in the Quran, but the ayat says, not she didn't disobey, they both disobeyed. They both did wrong. Not disobey. Let's translate differently. They both made a mistake. It wasn't just her. So Islamically, we don't say she was the one. And even in Christianity, they say that's the reason why they get haiz and they get pregnancy, because this was a sin of Hawa radiallahu anha, and it passed down to all the women. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So we as Muslims don't say such things. As a matter of fact, being pregnant, this is a mercy from Allah Ta'ala. Jazakallah khair.